Hey guys, it's the Middleblade 5, and today I'm going to be responding to a much more recent video. I am responding to Game Theory's Rosalina Unmasked theory. Now, before I get started, I want to quickly state that I have nothing against Game Theory. I'm actually a fan of Game Theory, and there have been episodes of Game Theory where I've disagreed with the theory itself, but still thought that MatPat brought up some good evidence. I just want to make this video because I notice a lot of flaws with this theory. So, for any of you watching that have not seen this video, basically, what this theory states is that Rosalina is Peach's daughter. And the main reason for this comes from Chapter 4 of Rosalina's Storybook in Super Mario Galaxy, where she has a flashback of her mother. Now, MatPat claims that this mother is Peach, and while there are definitely similarities between the mother and Peach, I'm pretty sure that the mother is more designed to look like Rosalina as an adult than Peach. And also I did notice some differences between the mother and Peach, such as Peach having smaller lips, and the only thing that Peach has, and only Peach has, that the mother also has, is the blue earrings. Now, the second bit of evidence also comes from the storybook. It's in the later part of the storybook where Rosalina looks through her telescope to see her home. Now, through the telescope she sees a tree on a hill surrounded by flowers with a castle in the background. Obviously, MatPat claims that obviously this castle is Peach's castle, which it would most likely be due to the silhouette, and that this castle is Rosalina's home. Well, there are two big problems with that bit of evidence. Is that one, it's never stated that the castle is her home, and second, there is a later part in the storybook where Rosalina starts crying because she wants to go back home, and she says, "I want to go back to my house by the hill," showing that she lives in a house and not a castle. This line even appeared in the video. So now that we got the storybook out of the way, we can move on to the genetic parts of the evidence. So, the first bit of genetics is that Peach and Rosalina both have attached earlobes. Now, while this is definitely true, there is one big problem with this bit of evidence, is that every Mario character with ears have attached earlobes. I'm not even making that up. If you look at every Mario character that has ears, they have attached earlobes, so any of them could be the parents. The next bit of genetics is that Rosalina and Peach both have blue eyes, as well as Mario, because MatPat claims that Mario would most likely be the father, which would be true. Now, the problem with this, though, is similar to the earlobes, is that every human character in the Mario series have blue eyes, except for Wario and Waluigi. So any character that is human and has that, except for Wario and Waluigi, could be the parents. Now, there's also another problem with the blue eyes bit of evidence, because you kind of fail to take into account the shade of Rosalina's eyes. If you look at Rosalina's eyes, and at this chart I will have on screen, you'll see that Rosalina's eyes would most likely be the true sapphire color, as they are brighter than the normal shade of blue eyes, while Mario and Peach have the brilliant blue eyes, which would mean it would be likely that their child would have the brilliant blue eyes instead of the true sapphire color. Next, and also another bit of genetics that you kind of really take into account is that Rosalina had ginger hair when she was a kid. So obviously, for her to possibly be Mario and Peach's child, they would have to have the gene for red hair. But there's no evidence that shows Mario or Peach having a gene for red hair. Next bit of the evidence is that Rosalina is left-handed. Now, the problem with this, though, is that, as you state in the video, Matt, that 10% of the world is left-handed. There are 6 billion people on Earth. So, 10% of 6 billion is 600 million. That is a large number of people. So again, technically like 600 million people on Earth. Out of those 600 million could be Rosalina's parents. And the other problem with this is that there are plenty of Mario characters who are left-handed, as you see in the sports games. And another problem with this is obviously that Mario is right-handed, well, as you reveal in the video, that Peach is actually ambidextrous, which means she's good with both her hands, meaning that it is entirely possible that the child could be right-handed instead of left-handed. And there is also one other bit of genetic that you fail to take into account, which is size. As anybody who has played any Mario game with Rosalina in it, or has seen the updates on Smash Brothers, you'll know obviously that Rosalina is much taller than Mario, and the problem with that is that size is genetic, and size comes from the father, and Mario is only 5 foot 1 inch, which is below the average height of a man, which would mean that it would be highly unlikely that Rosalina would be the size she is in the series if Mario was the father. In fact, if we're just looking at all the Mario characters we know about, there's only one possible person who could be the father for Rosalina to be that size, which is Waluigi. But obviously this would not be the case, as Waluigi being the father would mean that Rosalina would look much different than she actually does. Also, another problem with height, though, is that in a later bit of the storybook, you see Rosalina flashing back to different moments that she's had by that tree with her father, her mother, and her brother. Now, problem with this, though, is that if you look at the father, unfortunately I could not find a picture of this part of the storybook on Google Images, but the father is very tall, and much taller than the mother, and much taller than Mario, so it would be unlikely that Mario would be the father, considering that the father's silhouette is very tall. Now, you could argue that it's the storybook and it's just the drawing, so it might not be accurate, which could definitely be an argument, but if we're taking the castle, the tree, the flowers around the tree, and later on in the theory, what the brother wears into account, then we should also take the silhouette of the father into account as actual evidence as well. Now, speaking of that tree, the last bit in part 1 of this theory states that obviously there's a tree which Rosalina's mother is buried under. Obviously, Matt Vac said that he played through the entire beginning of Galaxy over again to find this tree, but he didn't. But then in the ending of the game, you see that there is like a single tree on top of a hill, and obviously Matt Pat claims that this is the tree where Rosalina's mother is buried under. There is a massive problem with this bit of evidence, though, is that the tree in the storybook is clearly an evergreen tree, while the one in the ending is an oak tree. And also, the flowers that are around the tree in the storybook are not around the tree in the ending, as well as there are hills on the left and right side of the oak tree in the ending, which does not match how the storybook, where the tree is in the storybook at all. So anyway, going on to part 2 of the theory. So, at the end of part 1, MatPat realizes that how could Peach be Rosalina's mother if Rosalina's mother is dead? And he explains this by showing the end of the game, which shows the galaxy resetting itself, and saying that Rosalina was born in a previous cycle of the galaxy that was reset. so Peach would still be alive. Now, the problem with this bit of evidence, though, is that all the events of the game when the galaxy reset were written out of existence. The starting point of the reset galaxy at the end of the game was before the events of Galaxy 1, meaning that Bowser kidnapping Peach, creating his galactic empire, and his galactic empire being destroyed were written out of existence, because that's not where the galaxy starting point of the new reset galaxy was. So, Rosalina was born in a previous cycle of the galaxy that was reset. She wouldn't exist, because her being born would be written out of existence. And even if the starting point of this reset galaxy was after Rosalina was born, before Peach died, then she wouldn't be in space, because, as you say in the video map, that Rosalina went into space because she was devastated by her mother's death. So if the galaxy was reset so that Peach wouldn't die, then Rosalina would have no reason to really go into space. And also, one of your other bits of evidence to state that the galaxy reset itself is that when you play Super Mario Galaxy as Luigi, you save Luigi in the missions where you save Luigi when you're playing as Mario. So there's two Luigis, and you say that this Luigi is a Luigi from the previous cycle. Well, obviously, as I mentioned before, obviously, it can't be Luigi from the previous cycle because the things that this Luigi did would be written out of existence. It's like how obviously we use this to explain Mario's multiple lives. Well, obviously, when it resets, it writes Mario's death out of existence. So the events that of this Luigi getting captured would be written out of existence because he's from a previous cycle of the galaxy, which was reset. In fact, actually, I have a theory of my own. I have a theory that the Luigi that you play as in Galaxy is actually Luigi from a parallel universe, because the Luigi that you save in Galaxy 1 is actually taller and darker than the playable Luigi. And also, the playable Luigi doesn't appear to be a coward at all, so he could be from a parallel universe where that version of Luigi is not a coward. Now, your next bit of evidence is to explain why Peach and Rosalina can look the same age, even though they're supposedly mother and daughter. And you explain this through Albert Einstein's theory of time dilation. Now, the problem with this, though, is that time dilation also affects age, not time. And you say, obviously, in the video that the Comet Observatory travels at speeds near the speed of light. And obviously, when you reach around the speed of light, time practically stops from time dilation. So the problem with this, though, is obviously that because time would be so slowed down because it's near the speed of light, would mean that Rosalina would barely age. And she was about 10 or something when she went into space. So if she was to age 10 years with time being very slowed down from time dilation, it would probably take decades or centuries of Earth time for her to be the age she appears now from time dilation, which would mean that Peach would be either old or dead from old age. So if Peach and Rosalina were mother and daughter, there would be no way for them to look the same age if this was the case. And next, obviously, is that you bring up, back to the storybook again, that you bring up the French version of Super Mario Galaxy, where in one page of the storybook, it says that Rosalina's father has a mustache. That you state that is because, it says that Mario is the father because of this. Well, obviously, this only says that the father has a mustache. And there are tons of characters in the Mario universe that have mustaches, even minor ones. And one other small problem, this is very minor, but I feel like I should bring this up anyway, is the problem that it's in the French version. And from Digino Gaming, I have seen a lot of small and pointless changes being made to different European versions of games. For example, in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, the Spanish version, Rock Hawk's name is Hawk Hogan. I am not kidding, that is his name in the Spanish version. And I always feel like that if you're going to look at like another version of a Nintendo game for evidence, you should probably look at the Japanese version, because that's obviously what the creators of the game have intended for the game, because you know they're Japanese. Obviously, then you say that obviously, oh, by this logic, the father could be Luigi, and then you conclude with that Luigi is the father and not Mario. Now, problem with this though is that obviously there is no evidence of a relationship between Luigi and Peach. One of your bits of evidence that there is a relationship between Luigi and Peach, that Peach doesn't show much affection for Mario. Well, one, she does, and second though, she doesn't really show much of an affection for Luigi, so there is no hint of any relationship between Luigi and Peach. And while you do obviously state that Luigi is taller than Mario, he isn't that much taller than Mario, so again, it would be unlikely that Rosalina would be the same size. See the size she is in the games if Luigi was the father. Plus also the previously mentioned blue eyes problem also disproves this. As well as also your evidence with how she got her telescope because Luigi had one in his mansion, in Luigi's mansion. The problem with that though is that Rosalina's telescope and the telescope in Luigi's mansion have different designs, so they're clearly not the same telescope. Now, there is one bit of evidence I quickly skipped over in this, and I did this on purpose because I wanted to say this last. Basically, in your parts of the theory where you want to have people not doubt you and say, oh, you're overthinking the game designers never planned this, and you say that the reason this is actually true is that you say that Yoshiaki Koizumi said that Rosalina was originally intended to be related to Peach. That you've accidentally destroyed your whole theory there, I'm sorry. Because the key word in this is originally, meaning that they were going to be related, but they changed it so they aren't, meaning that they're not related, which destroys this whole theory and basically disproves it. Now obviously, as I said before, this video is not meant to have any negative effect towards game theory, and I have nothing against them, and I am a fan of them. I just wanted to bring up the flaws that I noticed with this theory. Anyway guys, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you for my next response video. But hey, it's just a theory, a game.